What's going on, guys? In the market today, we saw some interesting movement, and I have a great feeling about the rest of this week as we had some very interesting news come out today where we have the SEC chair, Gary Gensler, swinging at these crypto companies. On top of that, we have a very unexpected partnership that came out of nowhere today in the golf world that's also related to stocks, so stick with me. And then on top of that, we have some very interesting news to go out or to cover related to the market overall that's also a little bit scary. So make sure to stick with us all the way to the end of today's video. Of course, we have some awesome setups for tomorrow as well. But Tom, let's get right into it.
Man, Mike, I don't know what's going on right now, but these stocks are not slowing down. Now, some are. If we go over to like Apple, for example, pretty rough day continuing off of yesterday, even with that event. Microsoft, pretty bad here. But some of the more growth-styled stocks, like Tesla, for example, having a huge move here, 1.7% today. And you might look at that and say, well, it's not very much. Look at the move in after hours, all the way up to 224.50 almost here with the explosion. AI is continuing up. Man, Mike, the Russell is really doing well right now. If we go to IWM on the chart, look at the way the Russell was exploding today. That shows that a lot of these lower market cap growth stocks are doing very, very well right now. And like I already named a few, there's so many exploding right now. Square is another one. We have the cruise lines also doing very well. It's like, man, the stock market is just not stopping, Mike. And I actually really like that. And we're going to have a lot of fantastic setups here in the video. So make sure you watch all the way till the end tonight. Let me know in the comments what your favorite one is, because we're going to have a lot of plays, Mike, related to golf, obviously a Coinbase, stuff like that, and some of these growth stocks that are exploding. So it's going to be a fantastic video. And man, I guess we'll start with Coinbase, man. Mike, not looking good. 12% to the downside here as the SEC chief, Gary Gensler, came out and just ripped the crypto sector, like you said. Man, there were some bad statements he made today. It was a rough day for the crypto community, that's for sure.
I'll tell you this, Coinbase stock was falling more than a stock would fall when Jim Cramer says he's bullish on it. Literally, it dropped like a rock this morning. And yeah, it closed down 12%, but it was down a lot more right around market open. And this all came about as news released where Gary Gensler, who is very influential, he's the chair of the SEC, he basically said, we do not need more digital currency. In fact, we already have digital currency, and it's called the US dollar. That is like the biggest slap in the face that, some of these crypto companies can get. It's horrible, for them at least. And as you'd expect, Coinbase tanked down. On top of that, there's a lot of, bad things coming for them on like the legal side of things from multiple different states as well. So long story short, Coinbase is taking a beating and the news is not too good. And what's very interesting is that Bitcoin itself actually had a decent move today as it popped up by like 5%.
Yeah, it did. That's what really struck me here, as like I had to really scratch my head, because I thought this would have actually made Bitcoin fly down almost as bad as Coinbase. Now, I know that it's obviously they're targeting Coinbase. It looks like the SEC is specifically suing Coinbase and Binance, like they said there, and their founders. So pretty interesting there. But I would have thought that really would have hurt the overall crypto market, as in Bitcoin itself. I can't believe that it's down, or up. And then Mara and Riot are also moving. Like, look at Mara today, 9.6% to the upside. Now, it did move off earlier in the morning to the downside like Coinbase, but man, it actually made for a pretty good dip buy there. So I thought that was very interesting. Makes me scratch my head a little bit, but I will say, for all the Coinbase investors out there, be very, very careful. We've seen a lot of these crypto companies have a lot of problems over the past few years. Now, if you're still a fan of Coinbase, fine. It's still very, very low here. There's a big support around 40. It could hold, but I don't know, Mike. It's definitely getting scary in the crypto sector. Those are some bad statements by the SEC chief there.
No doubt about that. And there's basically 2 to 3 main stocks you'll want to watch for these big crypto moves right now. Of course, the first one is Coinbase, so keep that in mind. But two other ones are Mara and then Riot. Both of these stocks obviously move up with Bitcoin as they have popped today, so keep them close on watch. But Tom, shifting over into some other news today, a crazy partnership literally came out of nowhere today in the golf side of things, where basically the PGA Tour and Live basically partnered together for a merge. So fill us in on this news. I know a bunch of people were pretty shocked to hear this.
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually a few golf stocks out there that we're going to get into in just a few minutes as well. And yeah, it's awesome to see this, Mike. So, as we know, the Live Tour was founded heading into this golf season. A lot of players that were on the PGA Tour were upset because the PGA Tour was just not paying out on their tournaments, like what you would think that a huge professional organization like them would. Like you see baseball players and football players making 35 million, 40 million a year plus, like Aaron Rodgers, 50 million on that one contract with Green Bay. Like, man, and you see the PGA Tour, like some of these big tournaments, you were only getting paid 4 million a tournament, 5 million a tournament, etc. I know that sounds like a lot, but whenever you look at some of the other sports and how much money the PGA Tour brought in, it was a lot. So all these golfers left and like pretty much went to this other organization, and now they're actually joining back together in a big merger, and they're actually doing this with the European Tour or the DP World Tour as well. They're looking to actually like unify the golf world, which is a pretty big thing, Mike. I mean, for this to happen is huge. Like we might see some PGA Tour Live events. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of stuff come out of this. And for the stock side of things, as everybody knows, Callaway Golf is huge. They run Top Golf, which is the huge entertainment complexes where you have those multi-story bays, lots of fun. You hit at like some lights in the ground and stuff like that. This stock popped up 5.52%. There's also a stock, GOLF, which pretty much runs the Titleist brand of golf, up 4.5%. I even saw Ruger is in the golf world as well. They were up a lot. And I will say though, Mike, it's interesting to see this happening. For all the viewers out there who watch golf, it'll be interesting for you guys. But some of these golf stocks like Callaway, for example, MODG, I mean, these stocks are pretty good. Like if we go out to a daily, it's bouncing off support and pretty low right now.
Yeah, so keep a very close eye on MODG. It's moving with some solid momentum, and there's some powerful news to, back that momentum up. So it's up 5.5% today. And honestly, Tom, it's actually pretty close to that $18 support as well. So for resistance for this one, let's say the next couple weeks go out, end up in a pretty good way. Where do you see major resistance overhead?
Yeah, so major resistance here is up around $23 a share. That's kind of like where we peaked there right before that big gap down with earnings. Unfortunately, it looks like they didn't have a very good reaction to their earnings report, which obviously dampened the stock there for a minute, but we're bouncing right back up off that support. With this news, I think we should watch $20 as resistance tomorrow as well. But I think 23 is very attainable in the short term. Honestly, that would only be around like a 3.5-point pop from where we are now, which is really not bad. I think that could be very attainable. Now, I will say, as I go to look at Callaway's options chain, it's not really the best. There's not a ton of like open interest like on the July chain or anything like that. On the June chain, there's quite a bit of volume today, but the spreads look pretty big. So it would be more of a share play for me, I'd say.
Sounds good. And then, Tom, there was some other pretty interesting news that I came across today related to the market overall that's interesting, but also kind of worrying at the same time. We can see on this chart right here from the Wall Street Journal that basically the market weight of Alphabet, which is Google, and then Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Netflix, Nvidia, and Tesla are now up to basically 30%. What this essentially means is like when you look at SPY or the S&P 500 or the market overall, essentially a very significant amount of that movement that we see on a day-to-day basis is from these big tech stocks. In the beginning of the year, they only had like a 22 to like 21% influence. Now it's all the way up to 30. So like that's pretty important. And really what that tells you is like if you're trying to bet against the market or whether you're trying to bet, in favor of the market, you have to look at these big tech stocks, especially Apple, as that is like the number one stock to watch market weight wise. These big tech stocks are getting more and more powerful, so you have to watch them very, very closely.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be very weird here over the next few months because I feel like there's a very strange thing going on, Mike. Like, where if we go out to some daily charts, we go look at some of these stocks that also have pretty big influence on the market. Like, for example, banks, like they're very, very low at the moment. Some of these stocks are so low right now where you're like, wow, like I feel like that they're going to start coming back to the upside. But then at the same time, you have Apple here that's right around all-time highs, just made it the other day. So it's very strange, and I feel like that the SPY is stuck here right in the middle of a range. We're getting close to this big 430 resistance here on the daily. I would not be surprised, like if the SPY stayed within a big channel here, Mike, because as the market starts to go crazy and we see these big tech stocks drop, the SPY might start to go flat. Even if some of these banks and stuff come up, those tech stocks have such big influence that it could weigh the market down. So I don't know. It could be a choppy next couple months heading into the holidays and, obviously the end of the summer. So I don't know, just that's kind of what I'm thinking over on the overall like macro things with the market, because it's definitely a big thing there with how much value those companies put into the S&P. And they're all so high right now, but then some stocks are so low.
No doubt. So while I can also see the market being pretty choppy over the next couple months, there are a couple stocks that I think are setting up in a pretty good way for this week. And I already talked about this one a little bit earlier in the week, and that is Zoom. They had some pretty good news recently. They're holding their ground in a great way, and I think the overall risk reward set up for this stock right now is better than it's been in a very long time. I'm going to be watching Zoom very closely to the upside, not only for tomorrow, but also throughout the rest of the week. I love the current price action. I love the news it had related to AI. Basically anything with that type of news has been booming lately. And it's a stock that when the volume comes in, when the momentum's there, it can get really powerful. So I'm going to have my eyes on it pretty closely.
Yeah, and I love that recent breakout here above 68 to 69. That was a big breakout today, and I'm really glad to see us hold up around that resistance at $69.70 to $70 there. That's a big hold, and it's definitely setting up for another breakout tomorrow. And I will say, Mike, all of my stock picks today are growth stocks, and I think that it's definitely needed today, given the overall market. First one's going to be AI from me. Now, AI has been very, very choppy lately. They had a ton of momentum a couple weeks ago. It slowed down. Now they're bouncing off the key $30 support, and they're starting to break out again. So if they can break like $39 to $40 tomorrow morning, I'll look at more momentum. They're in that growth sector, and it's one of the most volatile ones, up 8.13% today. The only stock that beat it on my watch list was ChargePoint.
Alrighty. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Ford, and I also talked about this one earlier in the week. It's on a pretty good uptrend right now. It is just under that $13 resistance level, and this stock is a stock that is, I don't know how to word it, but it's a pretty good, like, trending stock, if that makes sense, where it's like it can go in an uptrend and it can hold that uptrend for weeks or months at a time. It's been in a great uptrend for like a little bit over a week now, and I think it has a lot more room to go over the coming weeks, but it's also showing some good like price action day to day. So I will be watching this one very closely. There is some resistance at 13, but if we get through that, I think it could have like a pretty good move all the way up to like the 1350 area.
Yeah, and on like a daily chart, it's almost in like a huge wedge here. The purple line is like the top of the wedge. We have this bottom support around 10 to 11. If we get the breakout here, I think it could really go up. And we have that catalyst with Tesla allowing them to use the superchargers. I mean, that's got to help sell some Ford EVs, right? I mean, just gives people more options. So should be pretty good for them. I hope this momentum continues. It's definitely one of the hotter stocks out there. Like I said, both of my plays were growth stocks, so I got to go with Square, 3.84%. Go out to that daily chart. It reminds me of Zoom, very, very low, bouncing off support right now, getting above some key levels like $60, and it's starting to really rip. I feel like in the short term, we could maybe come up and test 70. So that might be a target over the next couple weeks I look at for Square. But for tomorrow, definitely on the on the radar for some day trades, Mike. Like there's just so many good opportunities today. It was hard for me to pick. Like I even liked AMD today. Like that price action around close was awesome around 124.50.
Beautiful. And I know you mentioned Square, and lucky enough, that is actually one of the momentum plays for tomorrow. So, Tom, fill us in on the levels to watch for this one.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and make them break out above 66.30 tomorrow, just above that high of day. I will say, though, if we go out to an hourly chart, we need to be a little bit careful. You know, this stock's getting pretty high up into resistance. It really needs to break here, so really wait for that confirmation.
All right, with the next one, we have PDD also to the upside.
Yeah, these China stocks had a day, almost flew under the radar because of the growth stocks today, but make them break above 73.15.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Apple, but to the downside.
Yeah, Apple, you know, this stock's been very slow the past couple days. Even with that big event, they're just so overextended. If they can fall back under 178.50, I'll be looking to front run some puts, possibly down to 177.50, but I think they could go even lower than that personally.
Sounds good. So you guys heard Tom. We have that downside level on Apple. If it breaks below that, we're watching it for puts. And then we have the upside levels on PDD and Square. If those stocks break above those levels, we're watching them for calls. But it is now time for the big money $1.285 million trade of the day. And we are looking at none other than Macy's, ticker symbol M. Basically, this stock right now is just under $16 a share. Someone dumped, basically, you can call it $1.3 million into the 18 strike call options that expire on November 17th of 2023. This stock has been in a strong downtrend lately, but it's been in a great uptrend since COVID, from lows of around like $4.40 or so. So it's interesting in that sense. This is like a high risk, high reward type play. Macy's was selling off big time last week, but they had a great reversal. So keep an eye on it. This is essentially a bet that, Macy's will pop up between right now and the middle of November.
Man, Mike, when I look at a Macy's long-term chart, it just shows you how some of these retailers have been hit so hard over the past 10 to 20 years. As we know, JCPenney's is no longer even around. I mean, it's crazy to see how some of these stocks have things like this happen. Sears obviously is another one, but in the short term, it definitely has some good momentum here back up, and this could be a good play into November. I feel like, it's starting to come up off some of these lows. I will say though, Mike, looking at some of the price action here, I feel bad for some of the shareholders here. There was a big support right around $15 to $16 recently. Macy's actually blasted under that support, and ever since that fake out under there, Mike, they've been coming right back up. Imagine if this goes on an uptrend now. I'd feel so bad for all the guys who cut down there. That's like one of those fake outs you see on the daily chart where you're like, oh man, like imagine cutting that there. That would have been brutal.
That's the worst. It's like when you have like a stop loss at a certain level and then the stock just rips through that. And then like the next day, it does exactly what you originally wanted it to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what it looks like here. But yeah, big play, 1.285 million. I think it could definitely come back. And man, I don't know what happened here. It looks like earnings really started to drive some buyers back in, but it's really good to see it coming up as much as it is. In the short term, though, I'm seeing a huge resistance around this $16 area. There were so many hits right here in the past that for a short-term move, you might just want to wait for it to break above like $16 tomorrow or even like $16.10. That would probably be a pretty good way to go.
Sounds good. Tom, earlier we talked about Tesla and how it's having a great move in after hours and just, it had a pretty good move today as well. I saw on Bookmap that there were some pretty big sellers lined up all day, but it looks like the after hours crew, I guess you could say put them in their place.
Yeah, they definitely did. Look at some of these big red areas here on the chart, guys. 220 was a huge resistance. We ended up breaking above that. If we scroll out, actually, 218 was even a pretty decent area in the day as well. But towards the end of the day, Mike, we started really blasting above that 222 and 221 level here. That was a big breakout in after hours, and we really ran up above where a lot of those sellers were. Now, obviously, in after hours here, you can see a lot of those sellers their orders obviously weren't out there anymore, and sometimes that happens. So it's exactly what the stock needed to get up through there. Now, if anyone out there is looking to play Tesla for tomorrow, you need to really watch the 225 resistance overhead. So if I actually zoom in here on Tesla, during the day, there were 324,000 shares stacked up there with sellers. That's $225 there overhead. So really watch it, guys. This is like X-ray for the stock market. That's probably going to be a hard area to break above. And if it does, maybe then you could get into some calls. But be very careful getting into something early on if we don't break that level, because as we can see, that is a huge area where sellers are lined up.
Exactly. And another thing that's worth noting is, let's say Tesla does break through that 225 level of resistance. If it stays above that resistance level long enough, we can see that eventually become a support level as well. So like, let's say tomorrow morning in pre-market, Tesla's at, 228 or something like that. You can also watch 225 for support.
Yeah, you definitely can. And that's normally how support resistances go. If you break above the resistance, then obviously that resistance will act as support. Same thing with support. You break under it, then that'll act as resistance. And it'll be a really big level tomorrow. 225, it's a pretty big level. Even like if we go out to an hourly chart here on a normal chart, you can see that we just barely broke out here. And there were so many hits around this 225 area in the past that we're definitely going to have to be careful with it, because we could reject, but it's looking good so far, Mike. Tesla's having a pretty good day, and I'm glad to see it, especially with some of those other stocks like Apple and others doing bad. It's great to see them holding up.
Awesome. And then, Tom, we can't forget about the earnings and economic schedule for the week. What's happening?
Yeah, tomorrow, GameStop and after hours, guys. That's really it. Other than that, just a couple other companies. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comments on some of those smaller ones there. Thursday, we have DocuSign reporting. Then Friday, we have NIO. That's going to be huge there. Some pretty big companies coming up end of the week. I will say, though, economic data this week, not much. Tomorrow, we're going to get balance of trade, imports, exports, stuff like that. Thursday, we'll get some jobless claims. But besides those, Mike, that's it for the week. So really not too much on the economic data point.
Sounds great. Well, I'm pretty excited. We're seeing some awesome move out of some of these growth stocks, which is great to see. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often. And last but not least, we want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Shrestha, in the YouTube comments. You've been super consistent, commenting in a very positive way for a long time, so you definitely deserve a huge shout out. Thank you so much to you, and thank you so much for your support. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching, and let's have an amazing rest of the week.